So there's an article in the Washington Post that talks, it's by this woman named Elizabeth Goyden, I don't know, or Goyntine, I don't know how you say it. But Elizabeth is a co-director of the Liberty and National Security Program at the Brennan Center for Justice at New York University School of Law. And she wrote an article in the Washington Post about Julian Assange, and she gets it right, which is weird that it ended up in the Washington Post. Assange is being charged. By the way, if you go to the Washington Post, they'll say, hey, your limit is up this month. Mm-hmm. So what you do is you open up a private browsing window, and then you take that URL, you put it in the private browsing window, and then you go to Washington Post and you get to read it for free.
Oh, good to know.
Just so you know. Clear your cookies. That helps. There's lots of ways to get the Washington Post for free, and I will not pay Jeff Bezos for the Washington Post content. I'm not going to do that.
I'm clearing my cookies right now, and you can't tell.
Bam! So this woman says Assange is being charged under the Espionage Act, a law passed during World War I to punish spies and traitors. But in recent years, the law increasingly has been used against government employees who leak classified information to the media. And that classified information would reveal crimes by the government. The Obama administration brought 8 prosecutions for media leaks, more than all previous administrations combined. So that was Mr. Hope and Change, Mr. Transparency, Mr. of the People, Barack Obama. He was the enemy of journalism, prosecuted more journalists with the Espionage Act than all previous presidents combined. That's your good guy, nice talking, sweet, smooth fucking while he fucks you in the ass, Barack Obama. That's what that is. And the Trump administration has upped the ante, bringing 7 prosecutions in the space of 2 years. So Barack Obama set the precedent, and now Trump is doing the same thing. And that's what people were screaming about when Barack Obama was leaving office. You know Trump is coming in. Why wouldn't you want to try taking away some of his power? But what Barack Obama did was expand the surveillance state and then hand it over to Trump. Alarmingly, many of the defendants have been whistleblowers. They disclosed information indicating waste, fraud, and abuse on part of the government. So the people we're prosecuting are people telling us about the crimes our government is committing. National Security Agency employee Thomas Drake, for instance, was charged with disclosing information about an illegal NSA surveillance program to a Baltimore Sun reporter. So if you tell someone that, hey, our government's doing criminal shit, you're in trouble. We're a nation of adult children of alcoholics, ladies and gentlemen, because that's how they act. Adult children of alcoholics, they're not mad at the guy abusing them. They get mad at the guy who points out there's a guy abusing them.
Yeah.
That's how that works. We're a nation full of those motherfuckers. We're not mad at Hillary Clinton for rigging the primary. We're mad at Julian Assange for telling us she rigged the primary. Isn't that weird? That's because you're an adult child of an alcoholic. Nonetheless, and until now, the Justice Department distinguished between government employees who leak classified information deemed prosecutable. So if you're a government employee, you have to sign stuff saying, hey, I won't disclose stuff and I'm going to be a good boy and I'm going to give up some of my rights so I can work at this job. You have to sign a piece of paper. So then if you went and leaked some stuff, even if it revealed crimes you had already signed a thing saying you wouldn't, so they can prosecute you on that. And that is legal for the government to prosecute someone who works for the government who leaks classified information. You can be prosecuted for that. But what you can't prosecute someone for is once a publisher like Julian Assange or the Washington Post, when they receive information, they can then publish it. That's not prosecutable. So the government made a distinction between the government employee who got the information, that's illegal, as opposed to a journalist who then receives the information from the person who stole it or hacked it or whatever they did. So those are 2 different distinctions, and that's what she points out in this. She says they always made a distinction between government employees who leaked classified information and outlets that publish it because they have First Amendment protections. The Obama administration also reportedly considered bringing charges against Julian Assange, but ultimately Obama's Justice Department decided prosecuting publishers of leaked information would be a bridge too far. meaning it would violate our First Amendment, and they weren't willing. They were willing to do a lot of evil shit, the Barack Obama administration, but they weren't willing to fuck up the First Amendment. They didn't want that to be their legacy. So they didn't prosecute him, and that was the right decision. Although the Espionage Act does not recognize a line between the leaker and the publisher, the First Amendment, as interpreted by the court, does. Okay? While the Supreme Court has not directly addressed whether publication can be prosecuted for publishing whether publications can be prosecuted for publishing classified information because no such prosecution has previously occurred. It has held that, if you watch that movie, The Post, the big point of the apex of the movie is when they didn't get prosecuted, when the government, the Nixon administration, decided not to prosecute Ben Bradley in the Washington Post for publishing. So no one's ever been prosecuted for publishing before. It has held that the court has held that the government may not enjoin a newspaper from publishing information based solely on government claims of national security harms, which is exactly what they're doing with Julian Assange, saying he committed these crimes that hurt our national security and double secret. Assange, however, engaged in the explicit solicitation of classified material. This is what the government's saying, and made no effort to redact information that could put people at risk. Dore said. That's a guy from the Trump administration who's prosecuting this. In the Justice Department's view, Assange is therefore not a journalist and is subject to prosecution for his actions. They say he's not a journalist because he solicited that classified information from Chelsea Manning. Dore's statement glosses over a crucial fact. The First Amendment gives journalists no special rights. In prohibiting abridgments of the freedom of speech or of the press, it gives equal protection to those who speak, those who write, those who report, and those who publish. So there is no special carve-out for journalists get to do this, and if you're not deemed a journalist, you don't get to have these rights. No, we all have these rights under the First Amendment, and it doesn't matter if someone says you're a journalist or says you're not a journalist. That doesn't mean you don't get to have rights. And everybody has the rights. This freedom of speech, freedom to write, freedom to report, and freedom to publish. And that comes from the goddamn First Amendment. That comes from the goddamn court. In the words of the Supreme Court, the purpose of the First Amendment was not to erect the press into a privileged institution, but to protect all persons in their right to print what they will, as well as to utter it. So speech is written, speech is spoken, speech is reported, all kind of speech, completely protected. Don't have to be called a journalist to have the protection of what people think journalists have. Journalists have the protection of the First Amendment. That's their protection. And it covers fucking everybody, not just journalists. Assange allegedly offered to help Manning. This is the crime they're trying to get him on. Allegedly helped Manning break into government computer systems, which would violate the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. The Justice Department, however, already charged Assange under that law several weeks ago. The new Espionage Act charges go much further, seeking to penalize Assange for simply encouraging and inducing Manning's disclosures. So, by the way, this thing, Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, him violating this would not lead to 117 years in prison. It might lead to a very short prison sentence, which is what they don't want. They don't want Julian Assange to be in and out of prison in a couple of years. So that's why they're now charging him with encouraging and inducing Manning's disclosures.
Wow.
Which is what journalists do all the time. Still, many Americans instinctively contend that Assange is different. And this is where propaganda comes in for the regular American people, because many Americans think that's, when it comes to Assange, I think he's not playing fair, as if you have to play fair. You don't have to do anything. If you publish something, you get to publish something, especially if it's accurate.
You know, it's awful to think that people have to be convinced that something atrocious, something violent,
I know.
some massacre has happened, but you shouldn't report it.
So the charges against Assange have nothing to do with WikiLeaks' publication of emails from the Democratic National Committee accounts from Hillary Clinton's private server. So that's what people think, by the way. They think, oh, well, isn't he a bad guy because what he did in the 2016 election? You know, he's not being charged with that. They're charging him with the revealing war crimes of the Bush administration. You know that's what this is about? And why do they want to get him for that? Because he's fucking up the war machine, baby. He's fucking their whole machine. I just showed you why Narratan and Nancy Pelosi want to get rid of him, and Trump wants to get rid of him because he's a puppet of the military-industrial complex now, and he's afraid Julian Assange revealed secrets about him. He didn't think he would ever be president, which is why he loved Julian Assange. And then as soon as he became president, like, well, maybe that guy's not a good guy. Because Trump's a bullshitter. And if you voted for him because you thought he was going to uphold freedom of the press or stop our military adventures, you are a chump. So there it is. The charges against Assad have nothing to do with what happened with Hillary Clinton. Nothing. They said his goal, they say Julian Assange's goal is to harm the United States. This is and this is what the propaganda is in the United States. So a lot of people who are against Julian Assange now think that it's because, oh, wait, no, his goal is to harm the United States, that he may be aligned with Russia, and that he cannot be trusted to make responsible decisions about when to publish classified information. He's a bad. We have to vet our journalists. Not anybody gets to do journalism. We'll pick who gets to tell us the truth. There is an excellent reason, though, why the First Amendment does not turn on the government's assessment of a publisher's level of responsibility or fealty to the United States. So what that means is the First Amendment doesn't rely on a government guy telling you this guy is a friend of the United States or not, or if this guy's a responsible publisher or not. I don't need a G-man, a guy from the government, to tell me who's a responsible publisher and who's sufficiently loyal to the United States so then they get the First Amendment. That's not how it works. And that's what she's saying. One that becomes self-evident when considering President Trump's comments on the press. So the president has referred to many news outlets, including the Washington Post, the New York Times, CNN, ABC, CBS, NBC, as the enemy of the people, irresponsible and disloyal. Incredibly, he has declared that 80% of the media outlets deserve that label. Irresponsible, disloyal, enemy of the people. Well, why aren't you prosecuting them? Why just Julian Assange? Why just Julian Assange? Oh, that's right. Because those people at ABC, NBC, CNN, they're never going to expose fucking crimes of the government. That's why. But Julian Assange will. I got it. But there can be no, this is the point of this woman in the Washington Post. This is a great point. This is her concluding, this is what I'm going to conclude with from her article. She says, but there can be no Assange carve-out to the First Amendment. Like, everybody gets the First Amendment except Assange, because he's a dick. The Justice Department's attempt to rewrite this core constitutional protection is a threat to every person or entity who publishes information and every American who receives it. So that's what Trump's doing right now. You thought Trump was this guy's law and order, and he's going to put things right, and he's going to be no nonsense, and he's going to get us out of these stupid foreign wars, and he's going to stand up for freedom of... He's the exact opposite of all that. Donald Trump is he's a warmongering maniac, wants to overthrow the government in Venezuela, wants to go into Iran, even though he said he hires John Bolton, and then he says, I don't want to go into Iran. You fucking hired John Bolton. And so now he's prosecuting Julian Assange, a guy who he loved when he was campaigning. It just goes to show you that you're a chump if you voted for Donald Trump for these reasons, and that he's just as big of an enemy of the people as the people he claims are. Trump is your enemy. Trump is your enemy. Just like Barack Obama was our enemy, Trump is your enemy. And a little bit more. Trump is a little bit more of your enemy than Barack Obama, because Barack Obama actually wasn't going to blow up the First Amendment. Trump doesn't mind. Barack Obama actually like, you know what? I don't want my legacy to be fucking up the First Amendment. Trump is like, I don't care. I don't even know what the First Amendment is. So this was a comment under this article. It says, interestingly, Julian Assange is not a United States citizen. Julian Assange is not a United States resident. Julian Assange received classified information while outside the United States. Julian Assange published classified information outside the United States. Yet Julian Assange is indicted for crimes that a journalist within the United States would never be indicted for. The process is the punishment. That's great. So that's what's going on with Julian. So now if any you bump into a dummy who thinks that Julian Assange isn't a journalist or doesn't deserve the blah blah blah, you can just point him towards this video or this article in the Washington Post, and remember to use your private browser. Next live Jimmy Dore show is June 5th. That's a Wednesday at Hermosa Beach Comedy Club in Hermosa Beach, California. Go to jimmydoorecomedy.com for a link for all tickets. We might be coming to your town. And if you love the show, please become a patron. Please support the show. We give you hours of bonus material every week. And please click that bell and make sure you're subscribed. Even if you think you are already subscribed, they unsubscribe people every day. Just check. Thanks for your support.